It's good to be here. I feel like I was, as I was sitting out there, I felt like my wedding day. On my wedding day, there were so many hundreds of people there, and I was so stressed because I couldn't see them all. Anybody had that happen at their wedding? And you actually went on the honeymoon and you realized your great-grandmother was there and you never said hi? Or your cousin from Alabama. I don't have any cousins from Alabama, but I feel as I'm looking around, my worlds are converging, and it's a little bit weird. I have some friends from church over here. Hi, girls. I have some students here. A lot of students are here. Hi, girls. I promise I won't embarrass you. I normally do, but not tonight. And then I feel like we've just died and gone to teacher heaven. It's like half of this place is teachers. So where are my PCA teachers? Woo! Okay, that wasn't half, but that was a good representation. Grace is home. Grace McMurray's here. Everybody say hi, Grace. She loves attention, so you're fine with that, right? Good. I mean that in a good way. Well, there is something special that happens when women gather together. In fact, Psalm 133 says, how good and pleasant it is when God's people dwell together in unity. That there's actually something that happens. There's an oil that comes from heaven that, like Aaron, it drips over us and it gets onto our clothes. And so I believe, as Debbie said, as Katie said, as even Robin has said, that tonight just being together, I think there will be some things in your life that might be hard. And after tonight, you're going to feel like there's an oil on your life because you've spent time with 333 God-loving women. And you just can't help but be changed by the people that you're around, right? So I want to pray, and then I want to tell you not just a few things, but many things. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you that it is without error, that it is completely reliable and true. Thank you that it does not return void. Thank you that you've put something on my heart that I know is for every heart in here. So I pray that you would help my words to glorify you, to be accurate to the best of my ability. I thank you for the time that's set apart to be here. Thank you for the guys. Thank you for the older women in this room. Thank you for the youngest here. I pray you bless them tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I want you to know that just because I'm standing up here, I'm not more holy. There's not a pulpit here, but I suppose on Sundays there is. And so I felt like I need to tell you that a platform doesn't mean that someone's perfect. A pulpit doesn't mean that someone's perfect. It just means perhaps that we're speaking a little more loudly than the people around us. I want you to know that I'm here out of obedience to Christ, although Katie did ask me to be here tonight. So it wasn't like I heard, in a dream, you are supposed to go preach. She did ask me, and I think I jumped up and down like a million times, like Heather did when she won the angel. So you're looking at a pretty messed up lady. I'm going to tell you a few things, and you'll say afterwards, you were right. Well, I'm a terrible cook. And so what we normally have for dinner would be either grilled cheese, cereal, maybe eggs if I'm feeling chipper, Chick-fil-A, maybe 3 nights a week. And so I'm married to a chef, and there should be no excuse for my existence in the kitchen, but there is an excuse. Second, on Tuesday, I went to the doctor and got a few shots in my forehead. Yeah, I told you I was getting shots. I didn't lie. I just told you I was getting shots. And so my forehead was starting to droop down over my eyes, and I couldn't see. So I figured I better go get this taken care of. And so tonight, if you see this is like immovable, it's because it is. In fact, today was the first, see how my eyebrows are going up, and I don't know? So today I said to the doctor, would this work by Saturday? I have a really big event and I want to look young and hip. And he said, I don't know, it's maybe it takes a couple weeks. And I said, I don't have a couple weeks, just shoot me up and make me look good. And he did, and today I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I got what I paid for. And so you're gonna notice tonight that all of this, like from here down, is super expressive. which is why I need you to turn the lights down a little bit. And then you're gonna notice up here, like very stubborn, like this is not moving. So this is my encouragement to you. Let this be the only thing tonight that does not move or that is stubborn. Do you hear what I'm saying? Let your hearts not be injected with Botox. Let them flourish, okay? Let this be a reminder. That's the second thing I wanted to tell you. The first was I'm a bad cook. The second, I had a little thing done. The third thing is, I think my 14-year-old is addicted to Xbox, and I don't really know what to do about it. And I'm trying, in my mind, I'm trying so hard to limit the time. We have all these gadgets that stop the internet, and I talk about it a lot, but then most days I'm like, just go play the darn game. And then about 8 hours later, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like his eyesight, he's gonna turn blind. He's not gonna get into college. He might not even go to high school. I mean, it's bad, but am I doing anything about it? No. So you can pray for me. That's the third thing. The fourth thing is, I would love to go on a cruise by myself. Who else would love that? Yes. I love you. I love my kids. I love my older boy that was here helping. This would be the dream of all dreams, to just give me a one-way ticket, not a one-way ticket, give me a round trip 1 week on a cruise where nobody knew my name. You know what I'm saying? That's never gonna happen. But I do want that, and I'm admitting that. Another thing, I hate my legs, and I love my arms. In fact, all that I'm thinking about right now is you're looking at my legs because I'm so self-conscious about them. But if only it were summer, I would have on a tank top, and I'd be kind of like, so nothing about me right now is working. If you added those two things up, I think I'm okay. Bad legs, good arms, we're halfway there. Okay. I also would call myself a yo-yo eater. Wait, a yo-yo dieter, not an eater. I sometimes crush it with my food. I'm doing keto right now, but I know myself so well that talk to me in like a month, I probably won't be doing keto. It will be eat everything there is in sight that has a cream or something on it. It's really embarrassing. I also have a really strong desire to impress people and to make people think I'm awesome. And so a lot of my thoughts during the day are, I wonder what they thought about that dance move. I wonder what they thought about my teaching. I wonder if they're gonna go home and tell their parents, we love Miss Mackin. I really struggle with words of affirmation and needing to hear them all the time, although I am in recovery. So tonight I'm not here to make myself feel better. I'm here really because I have a message. Do you feel better now that I've told you some of my stuff? The lights didn't get down, did they? Well, I do hope you feel a little bit better. I'm not up here because I'm perfect. I'm just up here because the Lord asked me to, and I said yes. I do believe that God has something for you tonight. I think whenever we stop and we pause, we listen, we take time out, I think God says, I've been waiting for you to stop because I have something to say to you. I've just been waiting, and tonight I think is a beautiful offering. It's you saying to God, although there's fellowship and food and some fun prizes, I think it's you saying to God, I'm so hungry, I'm so thirsty, I'm tired, I need some rest. And I hear, it's like the Lord saying, I know. And you took time out tonight, and you're putting yourself, it's almost like you're putting yourself in the river of God's presence, and you're saying, whatever you have tonight, I want to get that. And I'm preaching that over myself. It's like, whatever you have, God, tonight, I want that. This, I believe, tonight could be one of your watershed moments. I think it's possible to go through our lives and have maybe 3 or 4 watershed moments where you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God deposited something into your heart. And I've just been praying by faith that let this be the night One of those nights, because you'll have many. Let this be one of those nights that 20 years from now you look back and say, on November 9th, 2019, God did something in my heart. Not because there was a speaker there, not because there was great food, but because God showed up and he had a message for me. And as I look back on my life, I see 3 or 4 really significant moments. One was in Connecticut. I had just given birth to Zach. He was maybe a year old. And some ladies and I said, let's go to Connecticut. I was living in Maine, and let's go to Connecticut to a worship conference. And so we went, and the new mom mind kind of takes over, and you just don't really know what's going on. Do I have any new moms, like babies in the room? Not babies here, but a couple of new moms. You know that feeling? You're just like, I don't have a clue about anything. So I went just because the lady said to go, and I was really tired, and I missed my boy. It was the first time I'd been away from him, and it's maybe the second day. This was like a 3-day conference, and on the second day, I'm sitting listening, and I hear the pastor read from Ezekiel 37, which says, the dry bones will rise again like a mighty army. And he said it again, the dry bones will rise again like a mighty army. And I could see them coming from the east and see them coming from the west. And, I'm taking notes, the whole time taking notes. And he said, there are some things in your life that are dry and dead. And tonight God wants to raise those back up. And the words that he said, they went deep into my heart. And I started to cry. And then I started to sob. And then I was weeping on the ground. It was a church that had pews. And I kind of just got on my knees. And the Lord just started speaking over me, and I said, I don't know why I'm crying, although it could be postpartum, it could be a lot of things. And the Lord said, there's something that's been over your life that you've never acknowledged. And tonight I want to do business with you. And then I was like, oh man, doing business with God is not fun. At least the beginning. It's hard. And I said in the best way I could, what is it, Lord? And I closed my eyes and I saw, I'm sorry about that sound. Oh, wait a second. Is it okay if I bend this? I can't see you. Oh, you said yes. Sorry. I thought you were, yep. Hold on a second. Apparently I need Botox on my cheeks too, because they're like sticking into it. Okay, that might be better. So I was on my face, just weeping and sobbing, and the Lord said, you know those scars on your legs, the scars on your back from all that surgery? I was like, yeah, the worst part of my life, the scars that I have to carry around, and it's so embarrassing, and I hate them, and I wish I could take them away. And he said, you know those scars? I was like, yes, I know those scars. Well, those are my scars. And kept weeping, and he said, those are my scars. And you act as if they're yours, like you own them. And so actually, the scars that are on your body, they belong to me, therefore I get to tell you how to feel about those. And then I kept sobbing again. It just kept going, but I knew I heard him say this, Johannah, your scars are beautiful. And I gave them to you. Not because I hated you, but I wanted you to have a story to tell. That was 15 years ago, and it has been an indelible mark upon my heart when God met me in that moment and said to me, those things you call ugly are actually the most beautiful part of you. Because they represent my story lived out through you. And as I've prayed for tonight, I just prayed, God, let this be for maybe one woman tonight, or 10 women, or maybe everybody in here. Let this be that kind of a moment where you say to one person, I see you and I know you. And I want to help you. I want to talk to you about this beautiful verse from Psalm 16. I don't know who did this Robin did. Where is Robin? Robin, there you are. This is so, so beautiful. Psalm 16 says, "Keep me safe, my God, for in you I take refuge. And I say to the Lord, you are my God. Apart from you, I have no good thing. Those who run after other gods will suffer more and more and more. I will not pour out my offerings of blood to such gods." And then David goes on to say, "Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places for me. Surely I have a delightful inheritance." The boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places, and surely you have a beautiful inheritance for me. I have always loved that verse, but as I thought about teaching it and sharing with you, I thought I need to know a little bit about what David was saying, what he was doing. And so this verse for David was this idea that the presence of God would be his inheritance. Not money, not a kingdom, not fame, but the presence of God would be his inheritance, both on earth as he lived, but then in heaven when he received his glory. And then I thought, well, man, if I had known that, I would have put that chapter in my book. I already wrote the book, and I didn't even talk about Psalm 16. And I want to tell you that the idea of the cup and the portion, it's that God has put boundary lines around your life, and he said, this is your life. And it's beautiful. And sometimes you walk over into someone else's property and you're like, no, I think I like their property better. And you leave what God has said is your property. And then you come back over and you're like, yeah, you're right, this is pretty good. And then you see another boundary line. You're like, why do they get such a big house? Why do they have such a big, whatever it might be, car? And you start to think, this is much better over here. I'm going to just stay over here for a while. And all the while, God's saying, look, I have a specific a plot for you. And if you would actually stay in it for a little while, you could see how beautiful it is. I wanted to tell you, I'm not holding this up to promote it. I'm holding this up to show you something, because as I was thinking about what I wanted to say tonight, my nails look bad. I did them in the green room, and one smudged. That's all right. So it's really pretty, right? It's really pretty. It was like a last-ditch effort. I had trees. I had so many different covers. And then literally the Lord saved me from all humiliation by showing me this. And I'm so thankful for that. But I want to tell you that though there are lots of words in here, this has become a map to me. And it's God saying, the boundary lines for your life, they're really good and they're meant for you. They're not meant for another person, they're meant for you. And so today I looked at this and I was like, I just love it. And then I immediately remembered the pain of writing this. And it took 3 years. It was an incredibly difficult process. But I found out where my property was. And I found out where I was. Although I had been a Christian for most of my life, I had gotten lost on the journey. Not that I denied my faith or, came to a place of deep doubt that changed my direction, but I got lost in the sense of, I'm not really sure where I am. I know I have kids, I know I have a husband, but something in me is crying out for more. I don't know what that is. And so I looked at this and I realized if all people saw were the cover, they wouldn't realize the deep, deep pain or the sacrifice or the things it took to just put this on a shelf somewhere. It was something that I don't want to do again. And people are asking me, do you want to write another book? And it makes me actually get a little, I start getting anxiety. Because in order to write this, I had to go back and find out that I was really messed up. And it was humiliating and embarrassing to realize that I had a lot to work on. I'm thankful for a great-grandfather named J. Wilbur Chapman The story is about him and his life, and he was best friends with Dwight L. Moody, and he wrote the song, living he loved me, dying he saved me. You know that song? Buried he carried my sins far away. I was like, man, I got a legacy. I mean, Casting Crowns, they stole my song. They didn't really, it's public domain, but I thought I got to tell the world about this guy because he was an incredible guy, and I found out after researching him for all these years that his life was full of pain and full of loss and full of doubt and full of sorrow and struggle. And yet there was something inside of him, some compelling force that pushed him to keep preaching, that pushed him to keep going despite his difficult life. And I was so convicted of that he could do that in the early 1900s, and that I was whining about maybe having to wake up a half an hour earlier to study my Bible. There were so many things in my life that just became these glaring red flags. It wasn't red flags for other people. It was like, these are your red flags. I think tonight, one of the things I wanted to tell you or to talk to you about is, do you know where you are? I know you're here in this room, but do you know where you are in the span of your property, in the span of your boundary lines? Are you kind of stepping over maybe one side on the north and saying, I don't really like this anymore? Or are you like me, so guilty of comparing your life to other people that you've stopped doing what God has asked you to do because what everyone else is doing looks better? I'm going to come back to that question, but I want to read you something. The question is what? Where? Everybody? Are you? Yes. In Genesis, you know the story of Adam and Eve. They eat from the tree, their eyes are open, they realize that they're naked. So they grab some leaves and they make a little skort, it's like bloomers with some leaves around it. Do they still make those squirts? Okay. Was that my first embarrassing comment? Or have there been a few before this? A few? Okay. Well, they cover themselves up, and the man and his wife, they hear the sound of the Lord as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. You know this so well. And they hid from him. How do you hide from God, first of all? Like, good luck with that. They hid behind trees. I'm like, this is what you just ate from, and now you're hiding behind the very thing. You think that's going to be kind of obvious? Like, there's one apple gone, and he's walking, the God of the universe is walking, and there you are hiding behind the tree, I heard it wasn't apples, by the way, but that's for another day. The Lord says, where are you? And Adam said, well, I heard that you were in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, and so I hid. And you've probably heard it said that God doesn't ask that question in a sense of he's not sure where the kids went. It's like, why is he asking that? Anybody know or want to guess? What? He what? They went outside the property? Yeah. It's like he wanted them to say out loud what they had done, because in the confessing, there was going to be some sort of freedom. Isn't that true? Like, we experience that all the time. We talk about it in class a lot, right? When you do something wrong, God says, hey, I know you did that, but what did you do? And then you have to say it, right? We do this with our own kids. We don't just say, hey, you did that wrong. We want to hear them say what they did. Because in them agreeing with what they've done, there's more power it's like they get some power to change, right? So I want to stop here just for a moment and go back to the books. I want you to just be thinking about, where are you? God says this to Adam and Eve. He knows where they are, but he asks them anyway because he wants them to, from their own mouths, say what they did. And so be thinking, where are you? And then I'm going to put this back up. At the same time that I was writing this book, Carice, our African exchange student, came to live with us, which meant we had an 18-year-old in the house with teenagers. All my kids turned teen years when Carice came. I started counseling, not for that reason, although definitely now for that reason. My marriage was feeling a little rocky, and I was thinking, man, we're at the 23rd year, and we need help. And we got help, and it helped a lot. Just having a teenage boy, well, that can do a number on your boundary lines. Anybody here have a teenage boy? Yeah, talk to me after. We can cry together. They're beautiful, but they're hard work. So I went to counseling, and it was like, I'm paying a lot of money for the lady to say, where are you? And I was like, I don't know where I am. That's why I came to you. You need to tell me where I am. I'm paying you. You're not paying me. And she said, well, you can't figure out where you want to go until you find out where you are. And I said, well, these are all the things that are wrong. This, and this. And besides, I don't really know who I am. And she said, well, let's start there. Who are you? I was like, I don't know, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I've got all these, I got all these things that I think I am. And she's like, well, let's just start there. And I was like, okay. So she gave me some homework. And the homework was go home and start journaling. Most painful moment in your life. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have time. I got to be up in the morning. Go find your most painful moment. So I went home. I sat down with my journal, started writing, and immediately, and this was like the second week, immediately I saw myself as a little girl. And I remember being in my mom's lap, facing her. I was in a hospital, and this doctor came behind me and stuck a really big needle into my lung to drain my lung, which had filled up with fluid. And I remember squeezing so tight to my mom because it hurt so bad, so bad. She started crying, and I didn't cry. And I thought, I wonder why I didn't cry. And so as I'm journaling, I realize, so from the time I was 4, I didn't acknowledge any pain. And I'm writing, and it's like I hear the Holy Spirit say, yeah, you kind of like cut your heart off. You were happy to take care of everyone else's heart, but yours was kind of not even there anymore. And I kept journaling, and I realized that I hadn't grieved a really significant moment in my life. Now I was just a little girl, but I hadn't even grieved or cried about the things that I'd gone through until I started writing the book. And then I had to get real about some things that I'd gone through. And then the sweet book was going to be about J. Wilbur and all of his exploits, and I was going to put all these hymns in there and photos of his life, and the Lord said, you can write that book, but you're going to have to write your story when you write his. I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that, because I love image, I love looking good, and I don't want anybody to know my stuff. And he said, well, fine, you don't have to write the book. I was like, oh, I got to write the book. This is my destiny. I have to tell the world about J. Wilbur. And I did feel that. I felt that passion to write about his life. He's like, that's fine, but you're going to have to write your story. I can't do that, Lord. But it's the Lord to bring people around you that are helping you tell your story at the same time you're supposed to be writing your story. It's like I literally had a Gandalf, I guess, in my counseling sessions, because she would just be like, well, where are you today? This too shall pass. Or do not pass, he says that, but this too shall pass is from the Bible, I think. Is it? This too shall pass. I don't know, I'll look that up later, but it's nothing that's all that important. In the middle of the worst years of my life, I started to write a book. Now, I tell you, these were the 4 worst years of my life, 2015 to 2019. Well, I'll go back, 2018. They really were excruciatingly painful because I was realizing that I had been a fraud for a long, long time. And I had put on a face, and I had put on a fake heart, and I was like, everything's awesome, my marriage is awesome, my kids are perfect, and everything, you are, sweetie. Everything is so great about my life, like we're doing ministry together, this is so awesome. And then I realized I am the biggest liar that ever was. And when you find that out about yourself, you don't want to really go out in public ever. You just want to stay home for the rest of your life. But I had a job, I had to go to work. And it was like every day, the Lord just kept depositing things in my soul and my spirit. It was like, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. Just keep doing the work. Keep doing the work. And so the book, when I see it, it's the reminder to me of these excruciating years of uncovering a life that I thought was pretty good on its own. And then I started to uncover, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's one bone from the graveyard, there's another bone, I have so many things I've got to do. I would imagine tonight that some of you feel perhaps the way I have felt. Maybe a little numb, or like you're serving and doing and doing. It's like, Jesus, are you there? Are you really the living water? Because I'm so thirsty, but I keep thinking all these other gods. Service and works and Instagram, all these other things will take away my thirst. And Jesus says, I have always been the living water, and I always will be, and you can come to me at any time and receive from me. If you want to move forward, if you know you have a calling on your life, if you have a dream that you're supposed to pursue, you got to have to figure out your past. You got to go to that one moment, and every one of you in this room has that one moment. It's like, that was the moment I made a vow that I would never do that. Or it's that one thing that when you start to get close to someone and they ask you to tell them about your life, it's that one thing you leave out. It's like, I can't tell them that. But for you to move forward, for you to do what God's called you to do, you're going to have to go back and do a little digging. And for some of us, it might be like 4 or 5 things. It might be my parents got divorced, my dad left, my grandma, my favorite grandma died, or it was when my husband lost his job, or it was when I thought my life was going to turn out this way, but actually it's not at all the way I thought. And I have created a life around that one moment to protect me, actually from that moment. There's one story, I know we're getting, am I okay? It's 7:57. Okay, maybe like 5 minutes? Okay. We did start kind of a few minutes after. Okay. A few weeks ago, I was in Pennsylvania at a really small church. Daryl and I went to help bring a soldier's child to this small church. They wanted to help volunteer, and so we went and we bought all these gifts, and the next day we wrapped all these gifts, not just with this small church, but the whole community came. It's a beautiful time. And they said, while you're there, do a women's conference. And I was like, great, I'll do that. They didn't tell me that weekend to do it, but we planned it for quite a few months in advance. And then they said, and on that Sunday, we want you both to come. We want you to tell the church just what it means to follow God, or what do you do with something on your heart that you feel like you want to do, but you don't know how to make it happen. So we were like, we got that. Well, when we got there on Thursday, one of the Sunday school leaders, a lady, she said, hey, I wondered if you would come and teach the Sunday school. And I was like, well, what does that look like? And she said, well, it's between services. Just come and share your story. I was like, oh man, I'm planning for the women's thing. I'm trying to plan my Sunday morning thing. Sure, I'll put that in there. It'll all work out fine. And so Sunday we preached the first service, Daryl and I, and then I have this time, and we go into this church. Now we're in this church. It's 175 years old. So we're talking 1830, 40 something. And they say, well, the Sunday school actually meets in the very first structure of this old church. So we've been meeting here for 30 years. I was like, the same people? And they said, no, but this particular Sunday school, it's only like 70 people in the whole church, and so most of them are in this Sunday school. But they weren't that day because there were 2 services. Well, it's confusing. Anyway, there's 12 of them sitting around this little table. And it's like, okay, show's on. So here's my Bible, and I'm thinking, what am I going to say? This is like maybe 30 minutes, and I always know what to say, right, kids? Like, is there ever a quiet moment in class? No, never. And so I just kind of was staring at them, and there were some older men, there were some young moms. It wasn't like a mom's group, it was lots of different people. And so I started talking about Jay Wilbur, and he had this story to tell, and I'm trying to tell his story and my story, and there's power in telling our story, and I'm like, I'm not sure if they're getting this. And I said, well, let's just do this. Let's just, for a moment, if there were a bucket in the middle of the room, in the middle of the table, and we all had to throw in the worst painful moment of our lives, let's throw them in the bucket. And so I was like, yeah, you go first. Yeah, you, this older man right here, would you mind going first? But I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about it. And so they thought for a few minutes, and well, he said, I'm ready. I was like, okay. I had no idea what was going to happen, if maybe he would be the only one to tell his story, but he said, well, when I was a boy, my house caught on fire, and my mom died in the fire. And tears start coming out of his eyes. And then, of course, tears start coming out of my eyes, and I'm looking around the table, and I'm thinking, if this is all we came for this man to say this was gold. This is what had to happen today. And a few other people start crying, and the next guy's like, I want to tell my story. And he said, my grandfather was on the side of the road fixing a tire a few years ago. He was my best friend, and a car hit him, and he died instantly. He starts sobbing. And then I go to the next, and this young man said, my most painful moment in my life was when my dad drove off and left me and my mom and never came back. And he starts crying so uncontrollably that he puts his hands down and he puts his head down and he's just sobbing. And it kept going, and I wasn't saying a word. I'm also crying, and I'm thinking, these people have been together for all these years and they didn't know a single thing about the most painful moment. And this young girl talks about she had several miscarriages. An older woman talks about her husband dying when they were young. And the time went by, and I looked up at the clock, and I thought, we've got to go. And they're all as still can be, as if they've been paralyzed. And a few moments later, I said, did you all know each other's stories? They're painful. And every single one shook their heads. And I said, what do you feel right now? And they said, we feel more love than we've ever felt in our lives for each other, because we just heard about the story of pain that we didn't even know. And I said, does it make you want to hug somebody or go over and pray over them? And they're like, yes. And we had to get up, and it was, I'm not kidding when I tell you, they gathered in a holy huddle, and they were sobbing on each other's shoulders, and it was like this big hug. These 80-year-old men and 30-year-old moms, and some younger single moms and some older dads. And I left. I had to go up and preach, and a few days later I got a message from the Sunday school leader, and she says, I don't know what happened, but we're different. Something happened. And I said, I know what it was. You told your story, and you didn't tell the beautiful part. You told the worst part. And it changed your heart. It transformed your heart and the hearts of those that were listening. I will never forget that, and I will preach that story for as long as I have an opportunity to. Daryl and I work with kids, and we hear their stories all the time of losing their parents in the military, and we hear the pain that they have. They don't want to share their stories, but they do, and they find freedom after that. I'm going to end with this beautiful story from the book of John that talks about the Samaritan woman, and she meets Jesus. And he's like, I know you're here for water, but there's some better water available. And they go on to have a long discourse. And in the end, the story. He tells her to go back, and he reveals to her her own sin. And I love when we get to the end of this whole section, her only testimony was this: he told me everything I did. That's all she went back and told her town was, he told me everything he did. And the word says that they believed in Jesus because of her story, because of her testimony. And tonight I would say that you have that same power, you have that same calling. If you want to run the race, I think you need to face your pain. If you want to be set free, I think you need to tell your story. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to speak in front of 300 people. You might have to tell it to yourself in a journal. You might have to tell your best friend. You want your heart to become fully alive, then start telling the truth and stop hiding. You want your kids to thrive and grow, start telling them the stories. Tell them your stories, the hard ones, the good ones. I'm going to leave you with this. I think the best way to apply this would be to get a journal and just start asking the Lord, hey, can you take me back to something in my life that's tripping me up now? I want to go back. I want to get healing around that, and then I want to be able to walk forward. It might just be one thing he shows you, and you can do some work around that one thing. It's powerful, and it will affect the rest of your life.